The reason it was so important to me was that was the one thing I didn't do for so long. And it was, if I had one regret, I've always thought if I had one regret in life, it was the fact that I spent so many years. Back then we had cassette tapes, you know, you sent out in the mail. I would send my demos out, and I would wait a couple of weeks for a response and get none. And then I would send another one out. And in the meantime, I was waiting tables, but I wasn't, I think you mentioned it earlier, all in. Just going in 100% and saying yes to everything, because I felt like I was here to be a session singer. I didn't want to do anything else. I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to, you know. But when you get to that breaking point where you realize, okay, what I'm doing is not working. So when I started saying yes, and I started saying yes to teaching, I started getting back in contact with people that I had met along the way here, and just asking advice again. Okay, what do I need to do? I remember a lady at Occidental College told me, I was playing for a voice lesson there, and I had been here probably 8 years, and she said, you need to go join AFTRA. It was back when you could just join. And I said, why? I'm not working. She goes, well, they have a sight singing class there, and there's some people that work in the session world in that class, and I think you'd enjoy the teacher. So I thought in my head, I don't need a sight singing class. I have a master's degree in all that. Anyway, I did it anyway, and you know, fast forward 15 years later, I ended up teaching that class. The guy that was teaching the class when I got in there was Stan Farber, and when I was growing up, what made me want to get into session work was I used to hear all the songs on TV, like Sunday, Monday, Happy Days, you know. I would tell my mom, I want to do that. I want to do that. She said, acting? No, 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 the song, the song. So fast forward to this class, about midway through this class, I realized that Stan Farber was the voice on Happy Days. I have so many stories like that where once you just start saying yes and doing it and getting to know the people, same thing with, I remember one time I met Quincy Jones, and he said, this was before I got in this class and stuff, and he said, your job every day for 8 hours a day is to look for work and put yourself out there. So when you get up and you have nothing to do that day, you make a phone call, you get online and promote your website, you practice for an hour, you learn another monologue. You're always doing so. When you start getting to that place where you do that and you start saying yes to everything, it really does start falling into place.
It's something that when we study voice, we should be, you know, that should be really a priority, but it somehow isn't. Like for instance, I'm mostly a classical singer, and I could sing pop music really well, but I'm not really, you know, somebody who's a real pop singer will book the gig. It's a pop song before I will, and you really have to know that. I think that, like, my background with acting and conservatory acting is like you leave college and you know how to do an Irish dialect and a German dialect, and you know how to play an old man, and you realize, well, they're gonna hire a German guy, they're gonna hire an old man, they're gonna hire a woman, so that you really do have to know what it is that you have in your bag of tools. And it's okay to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that, but I have a friend who's really good at that. Let me get you his email. And it's, I think that I may have wasted some time fancying that I was a country western singer because I really like it, or, you know, this, all that kind of stuff that we have that's like a bunch of fantasy. And if you get to a point where you could separate what's the fantasy and really enjoy that and have a great sense of humor about it, but look at what it is that you've always done well, that you started doing when you were a little kid, before anybody taught you it. And then when it comes down to voice type, as far as soprano, alto, tenor, bass, there's all kinds of distinctions within that. And that's, you know, if you're a classical singer, it's called folk, and you have to sort of figure out where if you're a light lyric soprano, if you sing high, fast runs, there's all of those different distinctions in classical music, but it really does come right down to pretty much every type of music. It's just, don't spend too much time on something that you really don't have the ability to be hired instantly on. So it's an interesting kind of, you always want to be as versatile as possible, but but quite honestly, like there's so many people out there that the thing you do the best is really probably just going to keep coming back up for you, and you'll keep getting hired to do those sorts of things. So don't be afraid to really look at that as soon as possible.
Well, first I have to say, I remember when I was on a series, and I started to direct on the series, and then did a few episodes, and then I was on another series that I was allowed to direct on. That was great. I was on Once and Again. And so I got a directing agent, and I started thinking that I would sort of start going down that path. And I remember that the agent that I had, they kind of wanted to know, well, are you the child or the grown-up? Which one do you want to be? You can't do both. You know, you can't be the director and the actor. And it pissed me off. And I fired him, and stupidly. I think that you know, when you have somebody tell you that just, I was like, no, I can do both. And so I feel like, you know, I am not an entrepreneur. That I'm terrible at that. I'm being so inspired and realizing how much I have failed myself in not being the entrepreneur. I tend to kind of, but I do say yes to everything, and I feel like they, you know, in my world, the directing and the teaching, the acting, they're all the same process. I mean, not the same process, but they all feed on each other, and vitally so. And I urge my students, I always say, as an actor, find a director who will let you observe with them if you haven't done this before, and spend that 8 days on the set, 12 hours a day, go through the casting process. You will learn everything about acting. You will say, oh, you'll watch your friends come in and shoot themselves in the foot when they come into audition. You'll see everything. And so one always informs the other. I don't think I knew half of what I was doing as an actor until I started directing on a series. Yeah.
I think one thing that he said made me think about saying yes to everything also leads you to all these people along the way, and you never know who you're going to run into later, like the story I told earlier. So you always have to be careful. My mom used to always say, somebody's always watching and somebody's always listening. And keep your mouth shut. All these good motherly advices that I got along the way. But what I found out is you never know who you're sitting next to. You never know who that person is at that audition that you just auditioned with. When I was 19, I went to do this competition in Colorado, and it was a music competition, and we were there for a solid week, and I had a roommate, and there were 5 guys in the room, and there was a guy there named Tim Davis, who I just met through that week. We never really stayed in touch. 15 years later, I'm in a session out here doing a movie, and Tim is on this gig, and there's like 40 singers. And he comes up to me and he says, oh, I know you from somewhere. And we figured it out that we had roomed together. Well, that connection, just knowing that we had known each other, he was in the process of booking all the vocals for Glee. And he needed a tenor, thank God. And that was one of those cases where I know for a fact that just my relationship, even though it was just a week, I didn't ruin it by doing something stupid. But you never know. All those little pieces along the way start to reconnect, and it's this community that you never really get to be a part of until you start stepping out. And